I'll just go over our meeting etiquette in 2 minutes before we actually get started. I think I see a lot of people have already joined. Remember to please stay on mute unless you're speaking or planning to speak. For those who are on the phone, you can use *6 to mute yourself. Anyone who has a question, you can raise your Zoom hand. To do this on the phone, you can hit *9. Remember that to be eligible for a stipend, tonight you have to be present for at least 75% of this meeting, which would be 90 minutes out of our 2 hours together. And also a reminder for those who are calling into the 1-800-SPANISH line, you will also have to remember to click the mute button on your phone. And it is almost 5 p.m. and we're going to try to get started right on time.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hi, everyone. We are on the AT&T line right now. There is someone with a microphone on. If they could please turn off their microphone so we can hear the translation. Also, please let us know your name so we can record attendance.
Thank you. Okay. Oops. That sound is letting me know that it is 5 p.m. So we're going to get started here. We got our live stream going. I think, are we recording this meeting yet? Yes. Okay. So hi, everyone. Welcome to the 10th AB 617. Oh.
Sorry to interrupt you. Are you able to make me co-host so that I can go ahead and have the panel?
Yeah.
Thank you.
There you go. Great. Thank you, everyone. So we are going to get started. Again, welcome to our 10th AB 617 meeting for the Arvin and Lamont community. My name is Liz, and I'm with Harder & Company, joined tonight by my 2 colleagues, Daniela Flores and Dr. Amy Ramos. I know you're probably used to seeing Daniela's face as your main facilitator tonight, but tonight we're just changing things up, where I'll be taking the lead and my 2 teammates will still be here to support. We don't have much time for introductions, so I'm just going to quickly go through these slides. Again, hopefully everyone is familiar with our naming conventions. Please do remember to put CSC in front of your first and last name if you are a member, and also make sure that everybody in your household is identified for our tracking purposes. Again, please stay on mute unless you're speaking or planning to speak. You can always raise your Zoom hand if you have a question. That helps us put you in the queue and we'll call on you when it is ready. Just a quick reminder about our meeting etiquette. We are here to have a productive discussion and respectful dialogue, of course. So let's remember to focus on solutions tonight and let everybody participate and attack the problem, not the person, as well as seek common ground. Slides in Spanish. And looking at our agenda tonight, so we'll have our first half dedicated to CARB, where there'll be 2 presentations on the regulation and enforcement of mobile sources. And the second half will include 2 presentations from the Valley Air District on the stationary sources. We'll have Q&A after each of these 4 presentations. So we'll have 2 with CARB and 2 with the Air District. Then we'll wrap up at 6:50 p.m. and go to public comment at 6:55. And so now I will stop sharing. I do see we have a raised hand. Christine, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. I just have a wonderful announcement for Arvin and Lamont that I wanted to share with the group today. It was just announced a couple hours earlier with the state of California. So this is fresh off the presses. The city of Arvin has been awarded a $1.9 million grant to build Kavakovich Park. And we're super excited about that. And also I see that the county of Kern has been awarded a $6.5 million grant to renovate Lamont Park. So I just thought it would be appropriate venue to let everybody know tonight who's in this group, because it affects everybody in the community. And I can tell you this is a ton of hard work. I'm super excited for the community, and thank you. That's all.
That is such a great announcement. Thank you so much. Okay, and so we will get going with our introductions. I'll like to pass it off to Ryan first for any brief.
Liz, before you proceed, I think we are still hearing a lot of background noise on the AT&T line. So whoever, I think it might be Elvia. Elvia, si por favor puedes silenciar el micrófono en tu teléfono, porque estamos escuchando mucho ruido a través de la línea telefónica. So, simplemente ponga silencio en su micrófono para que pueda escuchar, nomás que no oigamos el ruido de la línea telefónica. And hopefully that helps. Thank you.
Let me know if we have to pause again. Yeah, so I would like to pass it to Ryan. Any opening remarks to get us started tonight?
No, just great to be here, and happy Wednesday, everyone. And thanks for continuing to work with all of us. And thanks to all the partner agencies and others that are joining us tonight. And as we continue to work on developing the SERP. So with that, I'll turn it over, or I guess I'll turn it back over to Liz. Thanks.
Thank you, Ryan. And I also want to make space for our co-leads, Bianca and Gus. Do you want to take a moment to give any opening remarks?
Yeah, I know that my partner's not here, Gustavo, but we do have Cesar. We've been prepping with residents, so it's very important, this piece, as we're initiating the SERP and also talking about enforcement with state agencies. So I'm very, very proud of the work that is happening down in the ground, and just following up on any questions that residents do have.
Thank you, Bianca. Okay. So before I pass it off to our first presenter, just want to give a little framing to the night. I'd first like to just thank CARB and the Air District for supporting this extra meeting that we're having, and to let you know that these presentations are in accordance with the AB 617 implementation guidelines that are really here to help build your understanding as the community of these very complicated processes that surround the regulation and enforcement of mobile and stationary sources. This meeting tonight is not necessarily about coming to any decisions, but the goal is really to have you all come out of this meeting with a grounded understanding of what these agencies do, what the regulatory rules are, and how they enforce them. So I think a lot of questions will be answered tonight that people have been having. And we really hope that everyone can come out of this meeting feeling empowered and prepared for decisions that will be made in the coming meetings. And so with that, I will pass it to our first presenter from CARB to share your screen.
All right, excellent. Thanks. This is Michelle Byers. And so I am your CARB liaison. I talked to you way back a few months ago when we all got started, given just a quick introduction to the blueprint. So I'll be talking tonight with my colleague. We're bringing statewide strategies to you. Hanjiro, can you, there we go. That's what I was going to say. All right.
Apologies
so,
for the delay.
No worries. Yeah, so exciting to see all the progress we've been making, or the CSC has been making over the last few months. Seeing it move forward is excellent. So this is kind of the next step, talking about what CARB does. So we're going to discuss the statewide strategies and how those kind of intersect with the Arvin Lamont CERT process. So for today, our presentation, we hope to explain a little bit about CARB's role in reducing the emissions and with statewide strategies. And we'll discuss how these existing and planned strategies can intersect, like I said before. And we're also going to talk about how you can engage with some of the regulations as they're being developed. And then, so from here, I am going to let Hanjiro take over and do most of the presentation, and I'm going to pop in here and there and ask him some questions just to make sure that we're all clear about what all the information he's going to be giving us.
And before we proceed, I'm so
Okay.
sorry. We
That's
are
all right.
still having a lot of background noise on the AT&T line. So those that are on the AT&T line who called in separately from the Zoom phone line, if you can please let us, if you can push either mute on your phone, so silence your audio, or push *6. If you push *6, that will block, it'll mute you, and then you can unmute yourself and do *6 again. If you guys can please do that, because we are hearing a lot of background noise. And hopefully that helps. Thank you.
No problem. And, we want to move slowly through this material, reiterating, I think, what the host was saying at the top here, that, we want to, if we succeed in our goals today of this presentation, everyone will leave with a more grounded understanding of what we do. And today, what I want to talk about are state strategies and really regulatory strategies to reduce air pollution statewide, and help everyone have a better understanding of what that means, and also to help the CSC learn more about these strategies in order to decide how to adopt these strategies and which strategies to incorporate into your CERP development process. So by including CARB's statewide regulatory strategies in the Arvin Lamont CERP, CARB will provide additional support to the community through tracking information on program benefits. Now, program benefits are really talking about emissions reductions primarily, but it's a wealth of information that can be used to support the CERP process. Michelle, I know if you want to jump in, I just want to let you know, I just want to remind you that it might be muted.
Thank you. I did get muted because my dogs were in the background making noise.
No problem. I saw you moving a little bit. So, so that's the first part, understanding, what strategies to adopt in the CERP and what it means to include CARB's regulatory strategies in your CERP strategies. That's the first piece of information we're hoping to communicate tonight. And the second is a bit more about how to engage with the CARB's regulatory process, and to learn a little bit more about how to represent the community's voice, in addition, independent of this CSC role, and potentially to help us influence the timing, or perhaps the focus or geographic benefits of a regulation.
So just quick, so what you're saying is that Arvin Lamont, if people in the CSC wanted to get involved in a regulation that's under development, they could potentially influence it in a way that could benefit Arvin Lamont specifically?
Yeah, during regulatory development, CARB will often host workshops and solicit ideas from the public. And this can be a great time for community members to bring their voices to the table. And as well, when regulation is being, when documentation for regulation is being produced, there's other opportunities to get involved and provide comment. And we'll talk more about those later in the presentation.
Great, thanks.
So just to take a step back, and hopefully this slide looks familiar to many folks here, your local air district, San Joaquin Valley Air District, the Air Resources Board, and the US EPA all have a range of both individual and collaborative responsibilities and jurisdictions. CARB is primarily responsible for regulating mobile sources of air pollution. So those are things like cars and trucks that are on the road, as well as agricultural equipment and smaller off-road engines. CARB is responsible for regulations which limit the emissions of greenhouse gases and as well consumer products. I see that there's a hand up. I wonder if we want to stop. Yeah, go
Can
ahead.
I interject one more time? I don't think that anybody on the phone line is going to be able to hear this meeting. We definitely need to try to see if we can pause this meeting while I have the interpreters on the other line. Go ahead and try to see if they can troubleshoot this. So we can just pause for maybe 2 minutes really quick, or less than that if I can get them to mute their phones. Just one moment, please. Okay, so I think this person, whoever's on the line, probably just has their phone on because they're not listening and turning off the meeting, and they just have the TV running in the background. So this is going to really interfere anybody who's listening to the AT&T line. Just wanted to share that information to those who are here, and I apologize.
Thank you. I'm wondering if if it's possible for us to possibly mute them from our end, or maybe just take them out of the meeting if it's going to be causing a big disruption. Hopefully they're able to get muted. I'll just give us another minute.
And unfortunately, we can't cut them from the line because it's one line. And if we disconnect it, it's going to disconnect everybody. We just can't cut someone out. So we'll probably have to either get another AT&T line with a new number, but I know that that might be impossible at this time.
Okay.
Yeah, the TV is still on.
Oh no.
Okay, si podemos hacer el anuncio, or if anybody can hear me, if you are on the AT&T line, just go ahead and hang up the phone and call us back. Si está en la línea telefónica de AT&T, por favor, corte la llamada y llame para atrás, así para poder tratar de resolver este problema. Porque no es justo para todos los otros participantes que quieren escuchar la reunión. Yeah, they're not listening. It's still going on in the background. Okay, let me try to troubleshoot this on our end. Hold on just a moment.
Can we take Bianca's question?
Yes, Bianca, go ahead.
I see that it's divided by 3 sections: federal, state, and local. But I was wondering, does the state also have some jurisdiction with air toxic contaminants? Because as we know, there's been a lot of confusion on that. Who is responsible of air toxic contaminants? And we want to make sure that the state takes responsibility or the local jurisdiction takes responsibility for this action.
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, first, we aren't siloed. I mean, there's a lot of overlapping work. I mean, you're right. While CARB focuses on mobile sources of air pollution, we do have there are ways that CARB uses their authority to regulate certain kinds of toxics. In particular, CARB has a program for air toxic control measures, which are measures that are used to regulate some types of stationary sources of pollution or sources of significant concern. And there's been some examples of the use of ATCM, of these airborne toxic control measures, these specific types of regulatory strategies to address emissions from classes of consumer safety or consumer products like composite woods, as well as idling from diesel vehicles. And so I think that there's a path for doing that, and but there's also these collaborative types of activities around all these sources of concern. And so, for instance, while CARB has some authority to or can write regulations which deal with stationary sources, we work with the Air District to implement incentive programs for mobile sources. And I'm sorry that the translation line is perhaps missing some of this information, but maybe we can try to provide some more detail on that in a way that's disseminatable.
I think you tripped over your words just a little bit there at the end, Hanjiro. Can you repeat the last part you were saying? I think what you meant was the district controls the stationary sources, but then CARB has the ability to, if you want to repeat that part.
I'm sorry if I misspoke. What I meant to say was that while CARB primarily focuses on mobile sources and the district would have more jurisdiction over stationary sources, there is a lot of collaborative activities. As I said, the airborne toxic control measures, which can deal with some types of stationary sources of emissions, as well mobile source incentives, incentive programs for technology replacement, which are generally administered by the air districts in collaboration with the Air Resources Board. So as I said, these aren't silos per se, and I just wanted to point that out.
So I'll just ask, do you want us to go ahead and proceed with the presentation? Okay. All right. We were kind of holding off, waiting.
Yes, we actually got that fixed. Thank you so much.
Okay, excellent.
Great. Okay. So I think all of this, just to try and get us back on track, and apologies. I know that when there's a break, sometimes it's hard. The strategies that Arvin Lamont are going to adopt through their SERP process are representing additional actions that are going to build upon, augment, or potentially bring new focus to some existing CARB and air district strategies. And to illustrate this kind of layered portfolio approach, I thought we could include here this graph that's a forecast of emissions of diesel particulate matter in the San Joaquin Valley from mobile sources. This particular graph might look familiar to some. I think you've seen some potentially different versions of this. I took this from our staff report, which is available on our website, and we'll drop a link into the chat if anybody wants to look at it. And just to illustrate here, existing programs that have already been adopted are expected to reduce emissions of diesel particulate matter from on-road vehicles by 90% by 2030, from 2012.
So hold up. So just so we're really clear then. So this graph is showing a 90% reduction. Does that mean that the the trucks that drive through Arvin Lamont, are they by 2030, I guess it is, are they going to be 90-something% cleaner? Is that the way it works?
Yeah, this is a regional estimate. And so it's obvious it's for the entire region. And so it's the total across the region that trucks are going to be the total of trucks, on-road vehicles in the valley. Now, the local benefits of this program are really going to be dependent upon the fleet that's operating inside of Arvin Lamont. And so there's a lot of opportunity through the SERP process, I think, to potentially leverage incentives to accelerate this timeline or to deliver more benefits quicker to the community. And it's important to note that CARB has a number of additional strategies to reduce emissions, which are under development, and some of which are included in the statewide strategy blueprint, which is also available through our website. And I think that the take-home message here is that when CARB strategies are incorporated into the SERP, we're going to provide additional tracking information to the community, and hopefully these data can then be used to support the community in identifying incentive strategies, which can target benefits and accelerate those benefits or accelerate those benefits into the community.
So again, just to sort of make sure we're clear. So what you're saying then is if the CSC decides to put some of those things into their SERP, then they can use that, they can sort of expand on that strategy for Arvin Lamont or bring it in sooner. Did I hear that right?
Yeah, I think that what I'm trying to say, and I just muddled over my words a bit, was that that there's two benefits to including these strategies in the SERP. One is the additional tracking information, and the other is that you can bring additional focus to it by using incentives to accelerate some of these strategies.
Great.
I see there's some additional hands, and we're happy to take questions, although I'm obviously going to have some time for questions at the end as well.
We're actually going to have a time for a Q&A session right after this presentation. Feel free to keep your hand raised, though, so that we can call on you right when it's time. Thank you.
Great. That's what I was hoping. Great. So just taking one step back, just to talk a little bit about the main types of programs that CARB develops to reduce emissions. So these are the key tools in CARB's toolbox. The first are what I'm going to talk about tonight, just a little bit, and I'm just trying to provide an introduction to, we really won't get into much detail, are CARB's statewide regulatory strategies. Now, regulations set limits or standards. They often define what technologies are available in the market. It might be what emissions control, what types of mufflers or emissions control devices are available for a vehicle, or what types of off-road or lawn equipment are available for purchase or sale within the state. The next big group of tools in CARB's toolbox are incentives, which accelerate the deployment of cleaner technologies. And incentives, I think, are often pretty straightforward. If a regulation sets the floor for a technology, incentives are providing that extra motivation for early adopters to go out there and adopt zero emission technologies. Finally, enforcement activities ensure that programs deliver on their intended benefits. And we'll hear more about enforcement from our enforcement colleagues a little bit later in the presentation today. So focusing in on CARB's statewide regulatory strategies, CARB develops a comprehensive approach to addressing sources of concern through a portfolio of regulatory programs. So for mobile sources, we can kind of break these down into two general bins, which are measures that reduce the emissions from vehicles that are on the road today, and measures which accelerate our transition to zero emission technologies in the future. I've listed a few examples here on this slide, And we won't have time to go into a lot of detail on any one of these, but we are happy to bring both staff and materials as far as to provide more information. And I've included some additional presentation materials at the end of this for folks to look at when they have time.
I just wanted to note, I see that the heavy duty inspection and maintenance reduction is on here. That's what's happening tomorrow, right? Can I point that out?
Yeah. So there's we have a board hearing tomorrow. CARB has a board hearing tomorrow night. And we have some information on that board hearing, some links which we can provide and are included in this presentation if anyone is interested in tuning in. The heavy duty inspection and maintenance program is often referred to as smog check for big trucks, and ensures that emissions control devices on these trucks are functioning properly. And delivering the types of emissions reductions that they're intended to. At tomorrow night's meeting, there'll also be another regulation that's listed here. The small off-road engines regulation will also be heard at the board meeting tomorrow night.
Great.
So as you can imagine, there's a large number of regulatory programs that deal with different sectors or different technologies. So really, this is just a small example of them. And to support AB 617 communities across the state, CARB and OCAP, our Office of Community Air Protection, work to track the programs, the progress, the implementation, and the benefits of a number of statewide strategies. And here are some examples of recent milestones or upcoming activities for some of the programs which I mentioned, as well as additional strategies that we're tracking. As I was mentioning earlier, the small off-road engines program and the heavy duty inspection and maintenance will be heard tomorrow night at the board hearing. And there's a lot of information about those available on our website. And so we've included those here.
And so I also wanted to just ask one more clarifying question here as we go through this, just so that to benefit all the CSC members. I've been learning about all this over the last week, and you know that. I've been helping to fill me in and all the details on all this stuff. But so I'm thinking, like, we've given all this information about all these statewide measures. So if somebody goes out and kind of researches it and comes across one that they think really Arvin Lamont really wants to understand, can they have somebody come and talk to them in more detail about the program?
Absolutely. I think that's, we're hoping that we can help connect folks with the right resources, and we'd be more than happy to bring the appropriate program staff to meetings in the future, or provide meetings outside of the normal CSC process to furnish more information. And in addition to what we covered in this presentation, we wanted to leave some time for questions. We provided some more detailed slides that hopefully provide a very high-level summary of some of the regulatory programs that I mentioned. And as well, I mentioned our website, and that we have a lot of information on our website. And just as a quick plug, we've been developing a lot of tools to help support the SERP development process, as well as connect AB 617 stakeholders with the types of information that we hear folks looking for. And I want to just plug really quickly here on the right-hand side, you'll see our resource center, which is a great tool for looking at different types of, actually just like an aggregation of tools. It's kind of Google for tools on the CARB website, because we have a lot of different types of resources we've developed over time. And as well, we have our AB 617 Community Hub, which is really a one-stop shop for information on the SERPs, and as well on progress tracking for SERP implementation. So we just wanted to plug those really quickly. Thanks.
And then on the next slide, we're going to show you, there's a couple of great ways to stay in touch with what's going on with the regulation development. The first one, of course, is to join our Community Air Protection Program website. The link is there. And when you go there on the left side, and this is true of almost all the programs at CARB, if you go on the left side, that there's a subscribe button, and then you can subscribe to that particular program to know when they have new events or new things happening. The other way to do it is to go through good delivery. And the advantage in that is you can have choices about like whether you get an email or versus a text and how often and that kind of thing. And then even more specifically, you can choose the exact topics you're interested in. That way you can really narrow down what you're getting to the things that you really want to hear about. So definitely want to put a plug in for signing up for those so you can find out more and just stay in tune when new workshops and things come around. And I think with that, we are hoping that we have made it clear about the way CARB sort of intersects with Arvin Lamont and how these statewide strategies can apply and be useful to your SERP development process. And so we're open for discussion.
Great, thank you so much to both of you. We are, of course, running a little bit over time, so I'm going to give about 5 minutes for this Q&A, and then we do have another one after their second presentation. So any questions we don't get to now, you'll still have a chance to ask them. And we will start with Mario. Thank you for being patient. You can go ahead and unmute. Mario.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's when you was talking about the diesel trucks on the regulation on the smog on it, he said that it's still in progress. My understanding is that like 95% already, picks up the smog issue on the diesel trucks. I think the next step is to be electrical diesel trucks for less smog. I just wanted if you could confirm me on that part.
Well, the program that's going to be debated tomorrow, or that's going to be heard by the board tomorrow night, is a real improvement, I would say, to what the existing program was. So the heavy duty inspection and maintenance, that smog check for big trucks, replaces what our priorly was called the smoke program. A couple of the big just benefits of it is that it has a much broader application. So it includes trucks that are out-of-state vehicles that are not registered in the state. So that's a big thing, is that it includes trucks that aren't just the ones that are registered in California. So that's a really important piece, and it also links it with DMV registration. So it keeps trucks from getting registered that don't meet the smog check standard. So it's really, I think, improving significant, more comprehensive coverage, and also addressing this gap with respect to keeping them off the road. So I think this program will be significant in its impacts. In the long run, transitioning to zero emission vehicles is really what we see articulated in the Carbs mobile source strategy, in executive orders from the governor's office, et cetera. I think that's really going to be, where we want to, where everyone wants to see us go. And incentives in the near term are probably the most effective way for us to get there. In the meantime, though, I think this is going to do a lot to reduce emissions from that tail of trucks or of equipment that is kind of the dirtier equipment that operates out there.
Okay, two, I was going to tell you, because right now we're talking about like the state of California problem on this deal with the diesel trucks and cars and stuff like that. But I'm trying to I want to get a better idea, because we're trying to fix up the problem here in Lamont and Arvin. And I feel that our situation here is not really the diesel trucks and the cars, or all the smog is going on here. And I'm trying to figure out if you guys talking about the whole Kern County, or you just talking about the survey that we are doing here for Lamont and Arvin. That's where I'm trying to get at for the problem that we have for the diesel trucks, all the smog for the diesel trucks and cars. Because I'm telling myself that I'm taking those problems out of the survey, because I don't feel that we have that type of problem here in Lamont and Arvin. Our smog problem is something else. That's where I'm trying to get at with this survey that we're talking about diesel trucks and cars. And I need to get are we talking about here, Arvin and Lamont, or are we talking about the whole Kern County of the smog of the diesel trucks and cars? Do you understand where I'm at? Because I feel the issue of the diesel trucks and cars are not the problem that we have here in Lamont. Lamont is a valley. It's not a city. It's not like LA or San Francisco with a lot of diesel trucks or cars. Do you understand where I'm at?
Well, I mean, I think that part of this process is all of us to learn more about the sources of concern in the community and where residents feel that there are sources to address. Mobile sources of pollution, particularly diesel trucks, non-road emissions, are a significant source of air pollutants, air contaminants, and across the state. So it's not just an Arvin problem. Heavy-duty trucks, dirty heavy-duty trucks are an everywhere problem across the state. So statewide strategies, so Carbs tools are going to be, very, very blunt instruments in some ways, right? They aren't targeted in that they deliver benefits to as many disadvantaged communities as they can, I think is the message. So.
Yeah, because
and I think the only thing I want to add, I think might help Mario too, is that program, as far as whether it's what Arvin and Lamont area want to put in their SERP, that, like Hanjiro was saying, that it would be up to you, but it was just one example. There are many different programs that you all will need to consider when you go to actually decide on measures that go into your SERP.
Yeah, because the thing is that I'm trying to figure out our situation here in Lamont and Arvin with all the stuff that's going on. I do not feel that diesel trucks and cars are really the problem, because we don't have that many vehicles to create that type of deal. Because you have to remember, diesel trucks got regulated already from the state of California for the smog and all that. Cars, the same thing. That's why there's a lot of changes. Carbs is doing a lot of things too to fix up the problem, and it's already getting fixed. My understanding is the smog part of the diesel trucks and cars are fixed already. They could do just so much. Well, the state of California could do just so much about the smog of those vehicles.
Great, thanks. I think we see another hand or two up.
And hey, real quick, Michelle, just because I think it's really, really important to make sure. I think part of the reason why we wanted to talk about rules and regulations and the different agency responsibilities, and it's because we feel like the information is really important, and making sure that people have accurate and correct information. So Mario, back in September, Mark Montalongo, in working with Carbs staff, presented the inventory, and I think it's really important to talk about. I dropped the link in the chat because on-road is a significant source of pollution in Arvin Lamont community specifically, not regionally, but in the community itself. And it's while there are regulations in place that are phasing out older, dirtier trucks, there's a lot of factors that go into that. There were some specific exemptions for age of fleet and the equipment that was in it, and so there's a lot of different factors that go into when those trucks have to be removed and off the road. But yeah, it is still a significant portion of the emissions, specifically in Arvin and Lamont, that come directly from mobile sources. And so I don't want it the takeaway that mobile sources is not a source of emissions in the community. It's a significant source in the community.
I'm not trying.
Thank you, Ryan. I
I'm
also
not
want to
try-
just let you know, Mario, that there are links, and we also, for Carbs End, we gave you a copy of the whole presentation too. We sent that out to everybody a little bit mistakenly as far as everybody needing it, but I think everybody should have a hard copy, and we included the inventory presentation in that.
Thank you. Definitely very important questions being asked. And I know I do see a few more hands up. I'm going to ask that you save those for our next Q&A session. And before we move on to the next presentation, we have a couple attendance issues to clear up. I'm wondering if whoever is Sunshine T1 could let us know who they are, either unmute right now or put your name in the chat. Also, the 310-487-9945 number. Please let us know who you are so that we can make sure that our attendance is accurate. I'll come back to this again. And again, please keep your hands raised. I'll get back to everybody right after this next presentation. Thank you, Carb.
Okay, that will be me. Good evening, everyone. Let me share my screen. Cool. Can you all see that? All right, cool. All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Udo Foha, and I am an air pollution specialist in the Community Outreach and Enforcement section at the California Air Resource Board. I'm happy to be here with you all, although it's virtual, and we're looking forward to the day that we will be able to do this in person. Today, we'll discuss enforcement plans within the Arvin and Lamont community. So CARB has a primary authority over emissions from mobile sources. Our rules require vehicles and equipment owners and operators to replace their older, dirty diesel engines with modern emission-controlled engines and to operate them with cleaner fuels. This leads to a reduction of toxic diesel particulate matter and other emissions by more than 90%. These rules are effective in reducing health risk in communities statewide. And this image right here, as you can see in this image here, this is an image of the heavy duty diesel inspections that have taken place within the region. As you can see, most of them have taken place within the region, but outside of the boundary, outside of the community boundary. And with this information that has been provided, we will be increasing our inspections and activity within the set boundaries at areas of concern after more discussion with you, the community members. So in past CSC meetings, you identified air pollution issues such as odors, oil and gas operations, truck operations and idling, fugitive dust, and pesticides applications as key concerns. You mentioned that odors, specifically from dairy and agricultural operations, industrial operations, and oil and gas operations are a major issue in your region. You listed concerns about odors, excess emissions, wastewater discharge and reuse, orphan wells, and flaring events in the oil and gas sector. There were concerns that oil and gas operations have been emitting excessive amounts of greenhouse gas emissions, resulting in increased risk to already disadvantaged communities. In the activity that was done a few months back, you identified some locations within your boundary where truck operations and idling were prevalent. Concerns about fugitive dust that is generated during the harvest season and the application of pesticides at local farms in the area have also been expressed. Because your community has identified a variety of locations where odors, truck idling, and other environmental issues may occur, CARB CARB staff will canvass the area to identify potential odors and high impact truck operation and idling locations. We're also going to request odor complaints from the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District that have been lodged in the community for the past few years to evaluate what types of issues have been identified in the past. Results from this work will be used to prioritize diesel vehicle and equipment inspections and odor investigations. CARB staff will also conduct a thorough evaluation of truck operations in the area, enforcing against non-compliance, assessing compliance rates, and determining locations of both legal and illegal truck and equipment idling, parking, and routing. We will prioritize facility inspections based on collaborations with the district, community groups, and an assessment of CARB's emission inventory database. CARB staff will begin by generating a list of oil and gas facilities of concerns as reported by the community groups. In addition, enforcement staff will inspect oil and gas facilities in conjunction with Cal EPA in a sector-based initiative. The initiative is comprised of enforcement staff from Cal EPA and each of its 5 regulatory boards and departments, as well as federal and local partner agencies to inspect and report on oil and gas facilities. There are some Arvin and Lamont oil and gas facilities on the list that will be inspected by this initiative. So supplemental environmental projects are community-based projects that are funded by a portion of penalties received by CARB as a result of an enforcement action. The SEP program offers a variety of special projects that can help lessen the impact of certain air quality issues where typical enforcement actions can. We'll work with you to determine if a SEP will be useful in addressing your concerns. And just a couple of example SEPs include school air filtration systems, local asthma, healthcare and education and support, urban greening, and other community support. CARB will develop a report summarizing each of the issues identified above, the compliance status of all facilities, vehicles, and equipment inspected in the region, propose the next steps for enforcement, collaborate opportunities on SEPs, and an assessment to understand the nature of the problems in your community, and to work together with you to develop the potential methods to address them. So we plan on working heavily with you, kind of having you take the lead in this. And then next slide. You feel free to contact either myself, Udo Foha, Eric Bissinger, Warren Hawkins, our manager, and or just the whole entire section, community outreach and enforcement section. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions or concerns. And that is basically the end of our enforcement presentation. If you have any questions, feel free to go ahead and ask them.
Thank you so much. I do see we have a hand raised. Feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question. Oran Chávez.
Sí, no, mi pregunta era anteriormente sobre el comentario que habían hecho, porque también hay camiones de gasolina también, troques también de gasolina también, no solo de diésel.
My question was about a comment that was made earlier in the previous presentation, because there's also some other vehicles that are with gasoline, not just diesel.
Yes, that is noted. Thank you. Are there any other questions? Yes. Feel free to unmute, Emma.
Thank you. My question is in regard to the plans to expand enforcement. What is the timeline looking like for those enforcement activities? Like, are they already developed and implemented in other places, or is this something new?
Sorry, can you go ahead and repeat that? There was a little bit of...
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. I was asking what the timeline is to implement those expanded enforcement efforts.
From my understanding, it looks like we're trying to start it as soon as possible.
Okay, so they're already like developed.
There are plans, for example, I believe like the oil and gas inspections. There are plans, they have been discussion already to start going out and doing that with Cal EPA and whatnot.
Okay, thank you. Are there any
Hey, I think a point on that one, that's part of a kind of a statewide initiative, not necessarily specifically tied to the community emission reductions program that's being developed for Arvin and Lamont. And so I think what we've done historically in working with CARB and working with community steering committees was identifying specific things and then incorporating those into the community emission reduction program itself as commitments.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Another quick question. Are there any are any of those enforcement activities currently happening within Arvin, Lamont, Polar Acres area? Like, I guess more straightforwardly, are there any industrial sources right now that are facing penalties and maybe CARB is exploring one of these enforcement activities?
So I think this is kind of what Hanjiro talked about a little bit. There's a lot of overlap. And so, when it comes to oil and gas, are certain pieces of equipment that fall under the state regulation. The district has an agreement with the state and is currently enforcing that. But what Udo was speaking specifically to is statewide initiatives that have been going on as part of a Cal EPA initiative, looking at specific source types. And one of the source types that's being looked at currently is oil and gas operations. And so since that's part of an ongoing effort, we can't share a lot of information, but yes, there is an initiative that includes Kern County as part of that initiative.
Yeah,
but we will be able to provide more information soon, and we plan on doing that.
Yeah, and this is Eric Bissinger. I work with Udo, and we do want to start working with the community to as far as the mobile vehicles go and the heavy duty trucks to help us locate areas where we can come into actually the boundary instead of just the region and see if we can come up with a compliance plan and assess the compliance rates there much better than regionally like in the past.
Thank you. I do see we have a question in the chat. What does the dust and pesticide enforcement look like?
I would say, again, this is all at the beginning stage, but this would appear to be like this would have to be a collaborative effort with the DPR. And this is something, again, we would like to get more, working more with the community and working more with different agencies. But this is something we would get DPR involved in and, try to set forth an official plan or work plan and then go from there.
I think also we really want to assess the situation that you see there. So just so we can understand the problem that you see, so that we can also be a voice for you when we do go to DPR and we can talk to them and have that deeper understanding of what you guys are experiencing. So that's like some early steps that we need to take, and we really like to start that soon.
Thank you. Bianca, go ahead.
You were mentioning about having collaboration with DPR, but we also have a key player here, and I wanted to flag that we do have the Ag Commissioner that does regulate a lot of the pesticide use in the area, and I wanted to bring it up as in a semi-vote that when we talk about these issues, also bring the Ag Commissioner, because they do have the jurisdiction of how many toxics are in the area of Arvin and Lamont. And I wanted to, I don't know if DPR is in the table right now or something, because I know that they're going to be presenting in January. And I wanted to make sure that when we talk about this issue, we bring all the key players not just half of the personnel. I know it's a state jurisdiction, but it also falls into the local jurisdiction. So all the key players should be in the table when we talk about this issue.
I made a note of it. Thank you.
I agree.
That'll definitely be an action item. Gustavo?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, just a comment on, I think the community, both communities, Lamont and Arvin, raised one of the issues that they are having, which is heavy trucks, diesel trucks going through their heart of each community. And how Carb is going to analyze that impact to those communities? Any initial ideas how you are going to analyze that? And I think eventually looking for options, but initially how you are going to analyze that issue that was raised by communities.
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's absolutely something that we have heard from other communities. In obviously we Fresno undertook a truck rerouting study as part of their SERP to try and understand, how to work with the local authorities to better route truck traffic through their community. And CARB is working on developing some strategies to work with the MPOs to leverage improved data on how vehicles move through communities to improve both the inventory, so how we estimate emissions, as well as to support strategy identification like routing. Right now, we're just doing some kind of early work with the MPO, the Metropolitan Planning Organization down in San Diego. And we're looking forward to try and continue to work on identifying the best available data sources to support this type of effort. And there's a number of programs across CARB, that look at trying to work on this, both on the enforcement end with our peaks, which are these trailers, which can be used to capture additional vehicle data, as well as research studies. So, I think it's a really complicated issue, actually, and one that's near and dear to my heart. So I'd be happy to provide more information about it offline, but those are just some of the things that CARB's been working on recently, and that the community might consider as strategies to think about.
Yeah, thank you. And just the other comment, I think just to support Bianca's comment that I think it's great to have a DPR, but also the current county agricultural commissioner should be engaged, because, in chapter, it was decided to do start the notification, and DPR wants to do it, but the ag commissioner is not willing to do it. So I think that's what Bianca was trying to say. We need to have all the players that if something is decided, the agencies that will be in charge of implementing or developing something are engaged and are liable to the communities to implement the projects that will be identified to reduce the pollution.
Yeah, I think we would want to, meet individually too. It's just where it's just, carb enforcement with the community, and so we can get just firsthand, understanding of what's going on. So, and then that's a good, starting point, I think.
Thank you. Bianca, please ask your question, and that'll be the last we take before we move on to the Air District presentations. Go ahead.
I wanted to, it really grabbed my attention when you were talking about rerouting. We had the same issue in Shafter, that we needed to bring the California roads to do any type of routing, and it was a huge trouble. In this case, how would CARB deal with this issue when it's multiple jurisdictions in just, let's just say like 184 Weed Patch is actually a freeway. It's a highway, I'm sorry, a freeway, highway, whatever you want to call it, and also 223. So those are the two main roads. Caltrans, I'm sorry, I finally got the word. So Caltrans is responsible for that, for those type of roads. What would CARB do in that case if residents do want to do the rerouting? How would you work with Caltrans in that circumstance?
Well, I think that is a difficult question and one that I appreciate. I just want to say, I think that the issue is probably going to be how can the steering committee work with the local, work with your city and the MPO and Caltrans to think about truck rerouting. Because it's a complicated question and it's got a lot of actors. There's not a single person. Caltrans, for instance, can't necessarily unilaterally, always do a lot to enforce rerouting. It's going to have to be, it's going to take multiple actions. So what can CARB do to help? I guess maybe is the only thing I can think to put out there. And CARB can help. Staff here can help with connecting with the right people. Potentially bringing other resources to these meetings and helping connect with those folks, as well as providing support on analysis or information and data, depending on the corridors of concern. So a freeway, for instance, versus a local road, we might have a lot of different amount of information about those types of concern or those types of corridors. So CARB can provide support through analysis, through data, through administrative support with connecting with the right folks. And I think those are the primary ways that CARB can really help on those types of strategies.
Oh, hey, Hanjiro, just looking to add, hey everyone, I'm Brian Moore. I work with Hanjiro and Eric and all the CARB people here. And just to add on to that, we have tried to reach out before to Caltrans. We've been somewhat successful in just developing relationships with their headquarters office in Sacramento, as well as their district offices. So we hope that this is the beginning of a way to collaborate with other state agencies and bring them to the table. And Caltrans does have a new at headquarters equity division that has been more responsive. So I think, Bianca, we can work on these collaborations. It'll be a challenge, like Hanjiro said, but at least now we have a connections and a pathway to move forward some of these ideas.
Would CARB let us know beforehand? Because this is, if wanting to allocate any type of funding for SERP in this issue, can you give us upfront if it's going to continue as something workable or something that is going to take a long road and it's gonna be frustrating. So that's why I wanted to make it clear, like there's other key players in case of rerouting, and if they are, like we had in Shafter, we have an ad commissioner that is refusing notification. That's what we were trying to avoid those type of issues if we do allocate any type of CERT money for this issue.
No, I get it. Yeah, I think yes, like we are here to help you in any way. So once you start developing a strategy, we will try to do what we can on our end, and we'll be brutally honest. Like if we're running into roadblocks ourselves, we will make sure you have the best information we can provide so you can make the right decision with your time developing these strategies and then also with the incentive funding available. So yeah, we'll definitely do that.
Thank you to CARB and everybody for your questions. I think now we can transition to the Air District. Let me see. I think we will go to Silvana to get us started, providing an overview of current and upcoming stationary source rules and how they are enforced.
Good afternoon, everyone. Buenas tardes a todos. My name is Silvana Procopio. I work as a senior air quality engineer in the permits department in our Bakersfield office. So I'm very close by. I'm going to share my screen so we can start this presentation. Give me a second. Okay. So can everyone see it? Yep. Okay. All right. the first thing I would like to discuss, or basically what the presentation will include, is the district's ongoing efforts in controlling air pollution from stationary sources. We're also going to talk about the rules that we have, the current rules that are in place to reduce emissions and control emissions. And also, we will touch on the permitting program that we have, how permits are issued and what's the process for that. There's right after my presentation, Renee Chavez will be providing information on the compliance aspect of these efforts to reduce emissions. All right, so as you may know, the development of SERP is it's vital to have your information, to have your knowledge as a community to basically develop this the series of emissions reduction strategies that you are putting in place. And that's why we thought that, as you know, very similar to CARB, it was very important for you to know what our efforts are already to reduce those emissions. We think that it's important for you to know what we have authority over, what type of sources of emissions we have regulatory authority over, and also what rules we adopted for the different stationary sources, and what's the permitting process. So that's like the three basically things that we're going to talk in this presentation. I think Henjiro mentioned this in his presentation, you know, who has authority over the different sources of emissions. And I don't want to be repetitive, but the Air District, San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District, controls what we call stationary sources. And if you remember from previous presentations that we addressed this, what is a stationary source? Basically is a source of air pollution that does not move. So like a factory or a business. So if you think about, for example, a dry cleaner operation, if you think about a gas station or an oil operation, body shop, those are sources that we as a district regulate. Then there's the sources that CARB regulates, that those are the mobile sources like cars and trucks and tractors, and then consumer products like hairsprays. We're going to have a section for questions, and feel free to, if you have any questions about anything that I say, keep your hand up and we'll definitely address them. Well, the district has had a comprehensive air permitting program for decades, since the 80s. Since air quality standards get tighter over time, and also technology gets better in terms of how emissions are controlled, the district is in an ongoing basis reviewing the rules that we put in place. So we're always amending rules, and we use different mechanisms to make sure that we are in attainment of the different state and federal requirements. One of these mechanisms that we will talk about later in this presentation, and it will come up throughout the entire process, is the best available retrofit control technology. That's one of the tools that we use that applies to existing equipment, the equipment that is installed or has been installed already. So we talk about that in a few slides. But as a result of these efforts of reviewing our rules, amending our rules, getting them more stringent in terms of air emissions control, we now account for only about 15% of the total emissions inventory in the San Joaquin Valley. As I mentioned, we have a series of rules, too many to count, but I listed some of the ones that I apply to Arvin Lamont area. that you probably are familiar with, not necessarily the language on the rule, but you know these sources. You go out in your community and you see these sources out there. I think one of the most important things for you to know is that these sources are regulated. These sources have to comply with the requirements of these rules. For example, we have commercial and industrial sources, and that includes gas stations, auto coating operations, internal combustion engines, dry cleaners, boilers, composting operations, wineries. And I know you have this type of sources of emissions within the community. You also have, and you're well aware of, there's a lot of oil production and refining operations within the community. And there's a set of rules that apply to the different types of equipment that these facilities have out there. Some of them are listed here. Like, for example, flares and wells and tanks, storage tanks, and fugitive emissions from refinery operations. Other sources, as you may know, is agricultural sources. Like, for example, there's rules for open burning. There are rules for conservation management practices for operations where there are confined animals, factories, and IC engines at an agricultural sources. There are fugitive dust sources that those are the 8,000 series rule, we call them. And basically they cover sources of fugitive dust, such as, for example, constructions. If there's any bulk material that is being transported, stored or handled at these facilities, open areas, paved and unpaved roads. And also there are other sources that are more applicable to residencies and new developments, and you're probably more familiar with them because this is for the community, basically, the wood burning fireplaces, water heater, and furnaces, for example. And just to talk a little bit about what the permitting process is, basically when a facility has an equipment that is a source of air pollution, they need to submit an application prior to the installation of this equipment. What the district does, and I'm one of the engineers who review these applications, is we go over all the requirements, all the rules that apply to this equipment, and we make sure that the equipment proposed by the facility meets every requirement, including best available control technology. That is basically all that the standards or technology that is out there that has been proven to work for that type of equipment, and it's the best available out there, basically. So we make sure that that is met, and also we make sure that there's an analysis on the health risks for the public. Some of the projects will trigger what we call a public notice, public notification. That means that the community has the opportunity to make comments or questions for a particular project. And once we make sure that every rule and regulation is met by this equipment, we issue what we call the authority to construct. That is an approval basically for the facility to install this proposed equipment. Once they do that, once they install it, before they run it, before they operate it, an inspection takes place, what we call a startup inspection. And if it passes the inspection, then a permit to operate is issued to them. Of course, there are periodic inspections to make sure that they remain in compliance with all the requirements that were set in place on that permit. The district also regulates other sources of emissions and issues registrations. And for example, I will we listed, I think most of them here. So one of them being the clean wood burning heaters, and that every registration or approval that is mentioned in this slide has a rule associated with that. So that means that if there's a rule, there are requirements that they have to follow, that they're subject to. For example, for the clean wood burning heaters, that is that rule limits the emissions on carbon monoxide and particulate matter from wood burning fireplaces, heaters, and other devices. So for anyone who sells or manufactures or installs one of these equipment, they're subject to certain requirements. We also have permit exempt equipment registrations. And the reason why they are permit exempt is because they are very low in emissions, but they still are regulated. They still, even though they don't require a permit, they still need to be registered because there are certain rules that apply to them. For example, a small boiler or ag engines. There's another type of regulation, that is the portable equipment registrations. Remember when I mentioned the stationary source, that we said, well, it's fixed. It's a fixed lot of land or something that doesn't move. Well, now with this, in this category that we say portable, that means that it moves, it's equipment that moves, for example, abrasive blasting operations or a concrete batch plant that are still regulated even though they're not part of that stationary source. Another one is the conservation management practices plans. There's a rule associated with it, the 4550, that what this applies to is agricultural operations to limit their fugitive dust emissions. We also have the dust control plans, and that is not for ag. These plans are the same in terms of limiting fugitive dust emissions, like the conservation management practices plans, but these are applying to construction, demolition, excavation, extraction, and any other type of earth moving activities. Then we have what we call the E-trip, that is the employer-based trip reduction. And the purpose of this rule, that is Rule 9410, is to reduce emissions from the vehicles used by employees during their commute. So for example, the workplace, it usually applies for workplaces with at least 100 employees, and it encourages carpooling or van pooling. And the last one that we mentioned here is what we call the indirect source review. And that one is Rule 9510. And this is the first and only rule in the nation that requires mitigation of emissions increases from new developments. For example, if there's a new hospital being constructed or a residential complex. All these approvals that we provide have requirements, and they're all being inspected on a regular basis. And that concludes my presentation. And I just put my email in case anyone has any questions. I also speak Spanish, so if you would like to email me in Spanish, feel free to do that. And I'm open for any questions that you may have.
Thank you. We do have a few hands up, and we will start with Joanna. Feel free to unmute.
Buenas tardes. Mi pregunta era, ¿también cuidan las regulaciones de Arvin? Porque en Arvin tenemos una compañía que tiene pipas de petróleo debajo de las casas y ni siquiera hay planos. ¿Cómo dieron esos permisos?
Hi, my question is, are you also watching over the regulations on Arvin? Because we have some oil pipes under the houses. So how is it that you gave those permits?
What I would say about that is, yes, all the regulations that I mentioned apply to Arvin Lamont area for sure. So it's part of the San Joaquin Valley and it's part of our jurisdiction. So that's in regards to oil pipes underneath houses. I might refer to Leonard if he wants to point something out about that.
Yeah. Thank you, Silvana, and I can help with that question. Yeah, so the San Joaquin Valley Air District, we regulate sources of air contaminant emissions. The underground, crude oil piping or other piping is kind of outside of the district's enforcement authority. I would imagine that would be more part of a land use kind of concern with either the city or the county.
Thank you, Leonard.
Thank you.
Mi otra pregunta, gracias. Mi otra pregunta era, las escuelas, nada más una carretera divide un field de una escuela. ¿Qué regulaciones ponen ahí? ¿Por qué tan cerca? Están pegados casi pader con pader.
My other question will be for the schools. There's only one street that divides the field from the schools. So why is it that they're so close together?
You were saying the school next to the freeway, right? Not the field?
Sí, está un campo de field, cruza la carretera, la Comanche, y luego está la escuela. Y luego para allá, para la high school también. Está la high school, cruza la carretera y está el field alrededor de nuestras escuelas. ¿Cuáles regulaciones tienen ahí?
Yo creo que varias, I'm sorry, I'm gonna go. I heard the question in Spanish and I was answering in Spanish. A few things I would say about that. One is, Leonard mentioned this about the county or the city being the authority to allow the land use, not us. So why the field ended up next to the school is something that it's kind of beyond the scope of the district. Then in terms of what regulations are applied to a field, I mentioned a few of them. For example, the dust control for fugitive emissions coming from fields, agricultural fields, I guess you're referring to. But if you're referring to oil fields, then there's oil fields.
No, eso ya fue mi primera pregunta, ya la contestó el señor, que ustedes no pueden tener eso. Pero la segunda pregunta fue de los files de campo, de trabajadores, el fil de campo, de fruta y eso, están junto de nuestras escuelas. Nada más los divide una carretera. Toda esa contaminación está pegada a nuestros niños, es terrible. Las regulaciones, ¿dónde quedaron?
Right. So you answered my initial question first, but I'm asking now about these different fields that are closer or that our agricultural workers are working in, like where there's fruits. And so I just want to know why that's close to the school. Where did the regulations go?
Joanna, what I would say about that, what I know, and I don't know if Leonard will have anything else to add to this, is it goes back to that first question you had in terms of what type of regulation, or basically I would say this: there are regulations on that the three agencies that Hanjiro mentioned in the beginning, EPA, CARB, and the Air District, kind of overlaps in what type of regulation. For example, one of your concerns could be probably the pesticides that are being affecting the school that is across the freeway. In that case, it's more a state regulation more than a local regulation by us. That's probably one of your main concerns. And then if it's dust, then we do have regulations for those fields that you mentioned, agricultural fields. And I can, if we, let me go back on the presentation and I'll show you that.
Hey, Silvana, I just want to point out that Lorelei has a good point that school placement and the timeframes and when the school was there versus the fields and vice versa. It's a very complex set of issues, how those decisions got made, and a lot of times it's the decisions were made decades ago, or if it's a newer school, and then it may be under the as Lorelei stated, under the state superintendent of education that makes the decision on siting of schools in particular.
Oh, thank you, Ryan, for that.
Yeah, I think we can, if there's specific, so through this process, through this community emission reduction program, what we're hoping to do is if there's a concern with emissions impacting schools, then maybe looking at certain measures that we can incorporate or include in the community emission reduction program to address those emissions. That would be the primary focus. Or if there's future schools or other things, and making sure that people are aware of it so that they can provide comments on those types of projects. That would be some of the goals of this process. But it's hard to say on kind of historical how things got there, because it's very complex and involves a lot of different agencies, why how the decisions were made.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you, Ryan, so much for that. I would add this when we are evaluating projects before we issue permits. If the project, every project goes through the process of learning, if they are within 1,000 feet of a school, a K through 12 school, and if they are, there's a public comment period where the public can make comments or questions. If any equipment that meets all the regulations will be installed within 1,000 feet of our school. So we are addressing that for any new equipment that is close to schools at stationary sources.
Thank you. Definitely important questions. I do see that we have quite a few hands up, but we have to get to the second presentation from the Air District. That doesn't mean that we're not going to get to your questions. Again, please keep your hands raised and we will get to you for the next Q&A session, and also feel free to use the chat. And I think now I will pass it to Renee.
Thank you, Liz, and thank you, Silvana. So before I get started, I just want to say good evening to everyone. My name is Renee Chavez. I'm a supervising air quality inspector at the Valley Air District. I am located out of the Bakersfield office. So let me share my screen. And here we go. So how do we enforce these district requirements that Silvana just discussed? We do have an enforcement program. The enforcement program is a critical element of improving air quality and meeting federal health-based air quality standards. Air district enforcement, it seeks to ensure businesses, individuals, and municipalities comply with local, state, and federal regulations. And each year, the district performs inspections at over 9,000 permitted facilities and responds to approximately 3,000 public complaints valley-wide. Some of the inspections of permitted sources, we perform unannounced compliance inspections and they are conducted to enforce air quality regulations. We do this to ensure compliance is being met by the facilities under normal operating conditions. Inspections are done on location and they include observing the process equipment in operation and record review. Inspectors utilize a variety of advanced detection and monitoring equipment to verify compliance with permitted emission limits. Just some examples here of our inspection staff at various stationary sources. So continuing with inspections of permitted sources, in addition of routine inspections, district staff visit and inspect sources for a variety of reasons, including complaint response, new equipment installation, equipment malfunctions or breakdowns, and observing required third-party emission testing. And again, additional pictures of our staff out at various stationary source sites. A very important part of what we do at the district, our top priority in the compliance department, is responding to public complaints. So the district's compliance department responds to public complaints which are given the highest priority. Complaints can be filed by telephone, online, or through our Valley Air mobile app. I do want to re-emphasize that this is important. Our phone number for the local office, you can call 661-392-5500. Follow the prompts. We do have a Spanish line as well as an English line. And during this time of year, we also have a Fireplace line, so you can leave complaints there. You can also go to our website. And of course, we encourage everybody to download the app onto their mobile phone. Inspectors are on call 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, so you will always get a return call. We do have a bilingual telephone complaint line, as I just mentioned. We also utilize a multilingual translation service as needed to respond to the caller. Inspectors communicate the results of all investigations with the reporting person. So we do have an open burning regulation. This regulation, open burning of residential waste and such as trash and yard waste, it is illegal. A district promptly responds to complaints of illegal burning and works closely with local fire agencies to encourage cross-reporting of incidences. Agricultural burning is also regulated and conducted under permit. Although agricultural burning is being phased out, it is still allowed for a few crop types where there are no feasible alternatives available. We do have an alternative to agricultural open burning incentive program. And if you'd like more information on this, we do have some information on our website on this topic. We utilize a smoke management system, and this is used to determine when, where, and how much burning may occur. We have the system to protect public health and to prevent significant deterioration in air quality or a violation of ambient air quality standards. So some examples of ag burning and ag inspections here. We are in the middle currently of wood burning fireplace season and heaters. So we do have a rule that regulates this source type. And that is our district rule 4901. Our curtailment season for fireplaces and outdoor wood burning heaters is from November 1st through the end of February. On each mandatory curtailment day, district inspectors conduct surveillance. We focus on high non-compliant areas or compliance areas and where public complaints regarding burning are common. We perform additional surveillance and complaint responses conducted on weekends and holidays and during nighttime hours. And there is a third-party certification requirement for devices that are enrolled in our burn cleaner program. So some examples of residential wood burning inspections are here. And so moving on to fugitive dust. So district rules limit fugitive dust emissions from many activities such as construction and demolition sites. Construction notifications or dust control plans, also known as DCPs, are required for a majority of construction activities. DCPs are reviewed and they're approved prior to the start of the project to ensure that operators will utilize required work practices to mitigate dust emissions. District staff inspection projects and district staff inspects projects in response to complaints regarding fugitive dust. So some examples of some fugitive dust are also here. And on to the topic of violation and penalties. So enforcement action is taken when a violation is discovered. We have a couple of mechanisms here. So one is notice to comply. It's limited to first-time minor violations that are administrative in nature. Notice of violation is for all other infractions. When enforcement action is taken, district staff work closely with people to come into compliance and to avoid future violations. And per a state requirement, the district's mutual settlements program seeks resolution. They provide the alleged violator with an opportunity to discuss the matter. Most cases lead to a mutual settlement out of court. A court may be needed when a mutual settlement cannot be reached. So just some statistics in this section here, some enforcement activities in the Arvin Lamont community. From October 2018 through October 2021, the district conducted 410 inspections and investigations of permitted facilities. We received and responded to 73 air quality complaints from the public. We issued 141 enforcement actions associated with violations of air pollution rules and regulations. So some additional numbers here. Number of complaints by type. Our largest number of issuance or complaints, is open burning, followed by other, and this actually captured oil and gas complaints that came in from stationary source types. Fugitive dust, odor, followed by some visible emissions, and it just looks like a couple of complaints for diesel idling as well as gasoline dispensing facilities. So this slide here depicts some enforcement actions that were taken and by type. Excess emissions was ranked number 1, followed by gas station violations, record keeping issues, some open burning, unpermitted, and so on. And that concludes my portion of this presentation. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Renee. We do have quite a few questions. We'll start with Mario. Go ahead.
Baja eso. Yes, I got a question on the orders on the waste station here, right here next to Lamont and Arvin.
Okay.
My question is, what is the rules and regulations on those waste stations, on people working in those spots? Because I seen a person working inside those waste stations with no gloves, no, nothing to cover or nothing like that. No mask, no nothing.
Sure. So I think there's a couple of things that you're identifying in your statement here.
Déjame eso, por favor. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. So yeah, I think there were a couple of different concerns that you were outlining here. One, I'm not sure, is the waste station, what is their main activity, I guess? What's being
Dump there? Sewage water?
Sewage water?
Yes.
Okay. If there's odors coming from that sewage station, then that is something that the air district that we would investigate.
There's bad odors, gases coming out of those locations.
Okay.
Yeah.
So perhaps maybe we can talk to you a little bit after just to kind of get more information so that we can look into it. It's very likely a permitted facility, so I kind of need a little bit more information to address fully that concern. But you also identified some concerns regarding, it sounds like personal protective gear, maybe worker safety.
Yes.
Is that okay?
Yes.
So that would fall under a different agency.
Okay.
We don't have jurisdiction over individual worker safety. That would be like a Cal OSHA concern. But we definitely can look into the concerns regarding odor.
Okay, and two, I got another, too, what I noticed on these locations of waste location, animals dying right there. I found a lot of animals, birds, foxes, dogs, things like that in the surrounding of these areas. There's no protection for animals. And two, I noticed that they don't even have signage saying what they're using at these locations.
Okay. Can you, let's see, let me give you my email and I'd like to get some more information from you. Do you have?
We can definitely help connect the two of you.
That would be
great. And I do want to acknowledge that, Mario has been bringing up this issue, I think, over the past at least 4 meetings. And so I really hope that people can listen to his concerns and take some action to get this.
Yeah, my concern is a lot of people think it's the problem of water, but it's not the problem of just water. It's the gases, the chemicals, the pesticides are poured in these locations. And not only that, sewer water, I know they use it for recycling and all that stuff, but we're having problems of seeing animals dying at these locations. And not only that, we are not protecting our environment.
Yeah.
And two, for all the odors that are coming out of these locations and gas, there's a big problem. And the thing is, the rules and the regulations and the boundaries are broken. And that's the thing what I'm trying to get at on the situation that the citizen is having here in Lamont and Arvin.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at.
Yeah, and thank you, Mario. And I know in response, I know that so you brought it up that you'd hope that we'd follow up on this. And so after one of the previous meetings, we definitely did follow up with Mario, and he identified an area of some water disposal concerns, and we immediately contacted the Regional Water Quality Control Board, and they performed an inspection at that location recently. So yeah, we absolutely follow up on the concerns that we hear in these meetings, and we treat them as complaints. And if it falls within our jurisdiction, we conduct an investigation and we provide updates. If it doesn't fall under our jurisdiction, we reach out to those agencies, we talk to them, we relay the concerns, and we put the individual in touch with them and to make sure that is being addressed.
Yeah, my real concern is the worker is working in an area that there's chemicals and stuff like that. And the sad part is that they go home, they hug their kids, then the kids get cancer or something like that. And it's a lack of communication for the company not to take care of the worker. And it's real upsetting for me because they have family, they get destroyed over things like that. And there's negligence, and that's sad. I just hope that we could open up our eyes and try to fix up this type of problem and maybe fix it. That's what this survey is all about. That's my understanding.
Definitely. We are not going to lose track of that.
I could say something, Mario. Mario, this is Eric from the Air Resources Board. And I am on the Cali PA initiative team, where everyone from under the umbrella of the Cali PA, like DPR and water and air and the waste. And I brought this up, so we are aware of it, and we're talking about it. I'll put my email in the chat, and maybe I could talk to you about maybe some more information we need.
Yeah, Bianca got more of my information. I'm not really good at email stuff.
Oh, okay.
But if you want to talk to Bianca got all my information if you want to talk to me or whatever you want to discuss on that.
Okay. I'll talk to Bianca.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. We'll make sure that you guys get connected. So we'll go to Maria. If you still have a question, feel free to unmute. Maria Dolores.
Sí, hola, buenas noches a todos. Mi comentario era en el resumen anterior, quería mencionar, aparte de todo, pues sabemos que la comunidad en sí tenemos muchísimas preocupaciones, ¿verdad? Porque es muchísimas las fuentes de contaminación, y una que quería mencionar es la refinería que está aquí en la comunidad de aquí donde nosotros vivemos, del 184, el Highway Wipesh, que antes se conocía así con ese nombre. Entonces, esa es una de las preocupaciones, porque sí está causando mucho daño, porque hay mucha gente que le duele la garganta, que le lloran los ojos, y son muchos los problemas. Otra cosa que quería mencionar es lo que mencionaron ustedes tocante a los químicos en el campo. Sabemos que las leyes durante mucho tiempo han sido muy flojas en cuanto a implementar leyes fuertes contra estos rancheros, porque los químicos que se rocian muchas veces nosotros los desconocemos, no sabemos qué alcance tienen ni qué cantidad se roció y qué son los daños que pueden causar, porque estos químicos van al aire. Yo he trabajado por años en el campo y puedo decir que en ocasiones llegamos a trabajar, todavía la hoja de la viña está húmeda por el químico que se roció un día antes por la noche, y pues a veces desconocemos realmente qué es lo que se está rociando. Ahora, como se mencionó, hay escuelas alrededor de todos estos files, campos de almendra, campos de viña, que pueden causar mucho daño para estos niños que salen a jugar afuera. Entonces yo quisiera que también se hicieran leyes un poquito más fuertes y se implementaran más en los rancheros, porque los químicos son tan peligrosos. Y como se mencionó, tenemos hijos, y aunque ellos nos instruyen que debemos de llegar y lavar la ropa en una lavadora diferente, no debemos de usar nada más un lugar donde lavamos nuestra ropa para no afectar a nuestros hijos con los químicos. Ay, gracias, ese era mi comentario.
Yes, hi, good night, everyone. My comment is that in the previous presentation, I wanted to mention, well, you know, we know that the community, we all have a lot of worries, and one of those is here in the 184. There's a lot of worry because there's some people who have been mentioning that they have throat issues and watery eyes. And something else that I wanted to mention was about the chemicals in the fields. We know that the laws have been very lazy in implementing laws for the ranchers, and we don't know what kind of chemicals are being applied and how much. And I've worked for years in the fields, and sometimes we've even had to work with the leaves still being humid because of what was sprayed the day before. And we don't know what is being sprayed or how much is being sprayed. And now when it comes to the topic of schools, there's a lot of schools nearby, and we know that these chemicals can affect the children around. And we have kids at home, and even though they tell us to go home and clean our clothes in a separate area, it can still affect them. And so that was my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone from the Air District or CARB like to respond to that?
Honestly, it sounds like it's exposure likely coming from agricultural fields after a potential application. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that, you know, on that point, it's definitely, we've heard from the steering committee that the concerns overall about pesticides, and as you heard a little bit earlier, we're planning to have a more robust discussion specifically in regards to that topic at a upcoming meeting very, very soon. So thank you for your comment, and yeah, look forward to continuing that conversation.
Yes, thank you. And we have 2 more hands raised, and so I'll get to both of you before we transition to wrapping up the meeting. So Bianca, go ahead.
Yes, I wanted to also comment on the whole pesticide exposure. This is an ongoing conversation, and it's a frustrating conversation because we have all these state agency, local government that have not taken responsibility for this action.
And now we are in the phase that we're talking about SERPs, and one of them, it is going to be a notification. We need to be notified when there's all these chemicals that are being sprayed on in all these communities. And like we did in Shafter, there's still no notification, but right here we have a momentum. There is people trying to know what's going on in their community, and especially because most of all the schools, as we heard earlier from one of the comments, they're surrounded by agriculture, and there's no type of notification, there's no type of acknowledgement what's in the community. And it does fall in some part of the jurisdiction, either in the state or local jurisdiction. And we've had the Ag Commissioner in this meeting since the first initial conversation, and yet we haven't heard anything from him. So we really need to focus that even though it does fall into state jurisdiction, bring those players into the table, because we need them to speak up and tell us what's the responsibility of each one of them. And if somebody does not want to take responsibility, what is the state? What is the local government going to do to make that happen?
Thank you, Bianca. Ryan?
No, I appreciate Bianca's comments, and understanding that Bianca has been a good member of the Chapter Community Steering Committee, and there is the notification measure there. I think at a couple meetings ago, the assistant director of the Department of Pesticide Regulations did come and talk about there is a movement that is going on at the statewide level to talk and discuss about notification, and have budgeted a considerable sum of money to move that measure forward. And at the statewide level, there's working groups that are working on that. And so I fully believe that we're going to have a really engaged discussion on all of this information at an upcoming meeting, and looking to hear additional feedback from the residents of Arvin and Lamont and the members of this community steering committee. So thank you.
Ryan, I really wanted to really down your comment, because the statewide is something totally different from the AB 617. These are incentive money that residents want to view as something productive. And if you're going back to the statewide, we're never going to get anything further from what it is. We need those key players here, because the residents are asking for it. For the statewide, it's still a long ways to go. There is about 4 more years to go for the statewide to even be implemented. 617 is now. 617 is money already that could be approved next year. That is going to be approved next year. And we could do those changes now in the community. We can't wait more years and wait until the state does any type of implementation. That's why the residents are asking for it, screaming to you guys that we need to make those changes here locally, not wait until the state does it for us.
No, and my point to that, Bianca, is that there's multiple things going on, not to dissuade the conversation by any means.
Yes, we hear you, Bianca, and we're going to work with the Air District and CARB to make sure that all the key players that you're talking about are able to come to these meetings. Emma?
Yes, thank you. First of all, I want to go back to Maria's comment. I believe she said that the reason why folks are experiencing the issues in the throat was because of the refinery being so close. I'm not sure if it was translated correctly. And the other thing I wanted to mention was that the complaint website that was shared through the chat does not include gas flaring on the what to report. I strongly urge that we include that in the website, because I mean, it's something that the Air District does oversee, and it's something that is continuously brought up by residents of Fuller Acres. And most recently, the gas flaring has become stronger, and it's usually happening in the middle of the night, which causes a lot of concern and seems a little suspicious as well. So I do recommend that we add that onto the website then the other thing I wanted to add is, when folks are mentioning comments, or sorry, when they're sharing their comments and bringing up questions, I wanted to urge us to take those comments, dissect them, and pull next steps from there. For example, Maria mentioned, we don't know what kind of pesticides are being sprayed. We don't know what it is. No one tells us. I think that's a really good action step for the next meeting, to provide information on what exact pesticides are being sprayed in those fields, and maybe bring specific information for the areas that have been brought up already, like the field right next to the school that Gabriela brought up earlier. And also, there was another point. Bianca brought up the responsibilities. That's another next step for the next meeting, providing information on each agency's responsibility and information on each of the agencies that are, would be a player in this role for pesticides and for any other issues of concern that have been brought up. Lastly, to this presentation, I wanted to ask if the Air District or CARB has a responsibility to inform residents nearby the refinery anytime that there's a penalty, and how does that look like? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for your suggestions on updating the form submittal for online complaints. So we'll consider that. Regarding the penalties assessed, we can provide information through the public records request process. It does require for you to make a formal submittal. So that can be done. Again, there's a form on our website. So you can utilize that. We don't post items to our website directly upon completion. So again, just if you could utilize that method, that would be preferred.
Real quick on that. So Emma, as part of this process and what we've done and we're putting together right now for this steering committee as well, as part of the 3-year look back for compliance, that'll include notices of violation that have been issued within the boundaries, as well as all the inspections that have been done and the complaints that have been responded to. In addition to that, we have an ongoing commitment to put together reports of any additional notice of violation that will be or that have been issued within the community as well.
Thank you, Ryan. Sorry, is there a timeline for that?
I think we're wrapping up the 3-year look back, and that should be done here, I believe, in the next few weeks. And we'll be sending that out to the community steering committee members, as well as posting it to the Arvin Lamont community, AB 617 community webpage.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. And for CARB, there isn't a role? Maybe?
Yeah, I can answer that. I mean, we have a mapping device, so that it's called the Enforcement Division visualization tool. I'll put it here in the map, and you can search by the regulation or areas and just zoom in and out and and by zip code, or even and once we get the the SERP going, where you'll have the boundary of Arvin Lamont will be there, so you can see all our activities inside of there. And then and we also have a website that for all the cases that we settle. And I wanted to say one more thing about the map that I'll put in. Right now it's done yearly, so we're trying to get it quarterly, so it's more up to date. And so we're working on that.
Thank you. So sorry, just to make sure I'm understanding there. So then there isn't any type of obligation from the CARB or the Air District to send, let's say, like a mail notice to residents that there was a penalty.
No, and part of the reason for that, Emma, and I would say that in, I don't know, 95% of the, or probably even higher than that, the notice of violation that we issue, the issue is resolved at the time that we discover it. It's rare that there's like ongoing issues with those notices of violation. So, if you kind of like, comparing to something, that, if the thought was to get it out there so people know and if they could, take actions, the majority of these ones are either have happened in the past, and through our inspections, we're finding out that there's violations, or while we're on site, we work with the company to bring that back into compliance as quickly as possible. Usually the same day within, yeah, short duration of time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I don't think we have any more questions left. So we'll start wrapping up here. And to your point about keeping track of these action items, we definitely are. And we want to share those with you right now. So I'm going to call on my colleague, Daniela. Maybe you can share your screen now and read the action items out loud that have come up from tonight's meeting. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. So hopefully you're able to see my screen now with these action items. So we have several for this meeting. The first is to develop a list of follow-up questions generated by residents.
Would you mind making it bigger? It's pretty small on the
Yes,
screen. Thank you.
Absolutely. Hopefully that's better. The first item is to develop a list of follow-up questions generated by residents on any questions that result from the enforcement presentation. So we have those documented, and so there will be a follow-up list generated. And Bianca essentially committed to doing some of that follow-up with residents. The next item is to provide more information about statewide initiatives from Cal EPA, looking at specific sources like oil and gasoline that Ryan mentioned. The third item is a recommendation from the CSC for the Air District and Carbs to invite the Agricultural Commissioner, DPR, current Council of Governments, and other agencies when discussing programs that will require their agency's implementation and enforcement. The fourth item, Mario Garcia will be contacted by the Air District and CARB regarding the waste area and odor concerns, worker safety concerns, and Bianca will facilitate some of that connection since Mario requested that this did not have that they used alternate methods from email. And number 5, the CSC also requested a pesticide exposure and regulation formal presentation to be hosted in a future CSC meeting. Some of the questions that they had, what exact pesticides are being used around schools, and consider also having OSHA joining at the next meeting. The sixth item is to create a community-friendly handout that clearly delineates toxins and who is responsible for regulation and enforcement of each. And the last one, the CSC also requested that for gas contaminants and violations to be added to the complaint submittal form in the Air District website. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So it's time to wrap up. Just want to give some announcements. Our next meeting is 1 week from tonight, December 15th at 5 p.m. Again, we are signing on early at 4:45 in case anybody has any questions or concerns that they want to talk about before the meeting gets started. At that meeting, you might have seen the agenda already. There will be some decisions to make. So we'll go over the proposed community air monitoring network and review the CERT requirements and timeline. We'll also start the next meeting with a vote on the proposed name change to South Kern that we've been discussing. We have heard that nobody wants us to dedicate so much time to this on the agenda, and so please come prepared to the next meeting to vote on that. An update on stipends. Those from October and November have been sent out. We have made some phone calls to confirm mailing addresses. Please contact us if you have not received them. We will work to get those out to you as soon as possible. Thank you for your patience. And we can transition to public comment right now. And I do see that we have a hand raised. Give me 1 second. Okay. Janet, would you like to ask your question?
This is more of an announcement. I just waited for this opportunity to give this announcement. I am a community health worker with the Central California Asthma Collaborative, and our organization is helping with a project called Watt EV, which will be building the first all-electric truck stop in the nation here in Kern County. This truck stop is going to be built off of Highway 65 and James Road, which is about a mile from the Amazon Fulfillment Center. And we just wanted to get the word out on this platforms, since there are a lot of residents here who are concerned with environmental impacts. You know, this project can be seen from a positive perspective, but also from a different perspectives. And we have been sharing this information with a lot of local organizations, but I wanted to take an opportunity to share it here and let everyone know that we will be having a public meeting tomorrow in person at the Martin Luther King Community Center in Bakersfield at 5:30 p.m. I will, if I am able to, can I share the flyers on the chat? Okay, so I will share the flyers in the chat in English and Spanish. You know, this is going to be an opportunity, you know, for the public and for small trucking businesses to ask questions to the Watt EV project leaders. You know, any question, it could be about the actual electric trucks, you know, the transition from diesel to electric. It can be how it's going to affect the community, or it could be you know, in support of the project. We really do want to get the public out here so that they can learn about this project and, you know, ask any questions that they might have. And there will be Spanish interpretation. We will provide dinner, and there will be childcare provided as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that announcement. Before we continue with the public comment, I do want to see if we can identify some outstanding CSC members. Sunshine T1, can you unmute yourself? We're also looking for someone who has the number 310-487-9944. I think this might have gotten that wrong. The 310 number. Please identify yourself so that we can get you on our attendance list. Okay. We'll still work to make sure that we get everybody recorded, but we can continue with the public comment right now. Does anyone else have an announcement or a question?
Liz, I don't know if you have me on your schedule for an
Sí,
announcement.
buenas noches.
Oh.
Sí, buenas noches. Mire, yo tengo ya desde que después de Mario hizo su comentario, el señor Mario hizo su comentario, levanté mi mano y he estado esperando que me asignen a mi pregunta, ¿verdad? Más que nada mi pregunta. La razón de mi pregunta era que mencionan de los carros diésel, que mencionan de las chimeneas, que mencionan de todo, pero yo vivo aquí en la ciudad de Arvin. Yo no sé cuáles son las regulaciones para los racing cars que le llaman, para las motos que andan en la tierra, porque nosotros vivimos enfrente de la escuela y créame que ojalá y me dijeran, mándame las fotos, yo te las mando, un video de todas las motos que andan o los carros estos para la tierra, cómo hacen de polvadera aquí enfrente de la escuela y de nuestros hogares. Puede que no haya ninguna regulación o haya una regulación, de la polvadera que levantan. Nosotros, créame que estamos cansados de cambiar los filtros del aire acondicionado cuando es tiempo del summer, y es algo que usted no se imagina cómo batalla uno con eso. Esa es una constante a los pesticidas. Nosotros, bueno, al menos aquí yo enfrente de mi casa, cuando los días que yo descanso, llamo cuando miro la avioneta que anda cerca de la escuela rociando y los niños están en la escuela. He llamado varias veces al condado del aire, bueno, al distrito del aire, perdón, que ha tenido bastante trabajo conmigo, la persona que está a cargo de eso, porque cuando yo veo la avioneta que anda rociando, yo inmediatamente le llamo para saber qué tipo de pesticidas andan tirando. Cuando yo miro humo alrededor aquí de la ciudad de Arvin, yo llamo al distrito del aire para saber si tienen permiso para quemar lo que están quemando. Yo creo que es una de las cosas que cualquier residente que viva, ya sea en Lamont o en la ciudad de Arvin, que miren humo, polvo, como por ejemplo en la Comanche, ahora sí que divide. Perdón.
Yes, since Mario made his comment, I have been waiting and waiting for my comment. I had my hand raised and I was waiting for you to address my question. So my question is that you were mentioning a lot about these diesel trucks and all these other things. I live here in Arvin, and I wanted to know if there's any type of regulations for those, I don't know how you call them, those cars and those bikes, dirt bikes, and we see a lot of them. We live here in front of the school, and if you tell me, send me pictures or whatever of these bikes or these cars, they're lifting a lot of dust and they're passing by in front of the school. I don't know, there's maybe regulations for it, but I would like to know, because we are tired of changing our filters for air conditionings all the time during the summer because of the dust. And there's something that you can even imagine how hard it is. Also, I wanted to talk about the pesticides in front of my house. When I have my days off, I always call the district when I see the plane flying over and it's spraying. Sometimes the children are still in school, so I have to call them to let them know, because I don't know if they have a permit for that. I don't know what they're spraying, and I have to call them every time I see smoke around. I always call to see if they have permits for all of that. All of the residents here in Arvin and Lamont, they should do the same thing. When they see smoke, when they see dust, they need to call you.
Yes,
Gracias. Y también queríamos saber si una vez llamamos y nos dijeron que era agua con azúcar que estaban tirando a los files para que las abejas como que absorbieran eso y lo llevaran para que hicieran la miel, pero eso es algo que no es creíble, ¿verdad? Porque la avioneta no va a tirar agua con azúcar para que la abeja vaya y tome eso y lo lleve para que haga la miel.
And one of the times when I called, because I saw that plane was spraying something, they told me that it was a water with sugar, and they would spray that so the bees would absorb that and they will make the honey with that. And I don't think that's something we can believe. I don't think they will spray water with sugar for the bees to make honey. So I don't know. I would like an explanation for that.
So to speak to
por el momento sí tenía muchas cosas, pero se me olvidó. Pero por el momento es todo. Gracias.
That's it for the moment. I had many things, but I forgot. So that's it for now.
Y muchas gracias a la intérprete que está muy bien interpretando.
And thank you very much to the interpreter that who is interpreting really well.
Very good. So to address the concern regarding aerial application, that's actually going to be something that the Ag Commissioner's department can best answer. They are informed of what material is being applied to agricultural fields. Now, regarding the concern from dust coming from open ground across from a school site, I'd like to get more information because there are several school sites out in the Arvin area. So I need to know which school site in particular is of concern. We do have regulations or rules in place that we can assess to ensure that compliance is being met. If it's not being met, we can then reach out to the property owner to see what measures can be put into place to get the dust to a compliant level.
Se llama el Camino Real is school.
Okay.
School is named Camino Real.
Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle, you said you have an announcement.
Yeah, I wanted to tee up that I think we've talked about it before, but just to remind everybody that we are putting on the agenda, I think that it's pretty much set with our co-leads direction to have DPR and OEHA come and talk to you all on the regular January meeting, which is the 26th. So kind of the meeting will be dedicated to pesticide discussion. So what I want to do is sort of ask you all to send, it's way over time now. I don't want to take up too much time tonight, but if you want to send me an email with any questions that you'd like me to address, and of course I've heard many of them tonight already, and I will definitely take those down. Or if you want to verbally bring them to the next meeting, that would be great. So just want to let you know that I am organizing that, and the more questions sort of we have up front, the better answers we'll get that night. So that's it. I'll put my email in the chat.
Thank you.
Is
Michelle.
the Kern County Ag Commissioner going to be invited for the January meeting also, because it's part of his jurisdiction?
It hasn't, I don't think we've talked about as far as a presenter. We can definitely invite and see what happens. I think maybe the district might want to talk to that too.
Yeah, and Bianca.
That was one
sorry,
of the action items to make that request. So thank you, Bianca.
Amy?
Ryan stole the words out of my mouth.
Okay. And so, Laura, I see your hand is raised. Before we get to you, we did have a comment on YouTube that came up. So I'm going to read it out loud. Does the control district provide a list of preferred vendors to switch a wood fireplace to gas? And the answer is yes. And I think we are going to post a link in the chat. Yes, thank you, Amy. Okay, Laura, thank you for your patience. Go ahead.
Hello, this is Laura Rosenberger Hyder. I had a question about that oil and gas well. It's near like that. This is a winery or something. It's on in the middle of Arvin. Trying to remember which one it was. It was Hunter Edison Oil Development, Trino and Arvin.
Laura, did you complete your question? I don't know if you accidentally muted yourself.
Oh, yes. I just wanted to ask what VOC was emitted, because I saw there's the VOC emissions over there coming from that facility when I looked on the facility map.
I'm not sure what you're speaking to. Did you see it yourself, or it was on what map are you referring to?
it was
Maybe
on
talk-
your facility emissions map. We have VOCs emitted by different
Yeah.
facilities. I clicked on
So
icons for the locations or industries in that area.
So for that listing, Laura, we do not speciate the VOCs. So the district defines what compounds constitute VOCs. And so this reports that information. So it's a mixture of many organic compounds as defined by district rules.
Thank you, Ryan. I saw a hand popped up and then it went down. Are there any last questions? Okay. Well, that will conclude our public comment for tonight. Thank you all for staying on a little late. We definitely got a lot of information presented at us today. And I look forward to continuing our conversation in 1 week.